All right. Well, welcome everyone. Today we will be covering a wide range of topics specifically related to the ESSER plan review and update and forecasting some expectations related to the forthcoming federal data collection. Our purpose today is really threefold with a Q&A. So we'll provide a brief overview of ESSER funds, including key dates. We'll explain the process of the district plan update and provide some state support on that. We'll forecast the upcoming data collection for ESSER 1, 2, and 3. And then we will field some questions that you have related to the plan update process. And just for some session details for you today, we are drawing our information from both the Federal Register with information related to each of the legislative acts that produce the ESSER funding, specifically the ARP, the American Rescue Plan Act, as well as the ESSER GEAR FAQ document. That is a document that we use pretty heavily, and I know that I've referred a number of you to it before many times, so I'm learning my way around that document pretty well. So if you're having any trouble navigating, feel free to reach out. We've also created some FAQ documents as well as some state guidance. That guidance can all be found on our website. I'll give you a little bit of a tour of the website at the end of the session today, as we are always updating content there. And lastly, just the disclaimer, similar to the FAQ document issued by the Department of Education on ESSER and GEAR, the contents of this document do not have the force and effect of law and are not meant to bind the public in any way. The information is subject to change as additional information is released by USAID. And those of you who have been on this ESSER journey with us, you know that that information does change. And so we do our best to keep on top of that and keep you informed in that process. So I am not presenting by myself today, thank goodness. And so we'll take a moment to let each of my colleagues introduce themselves. And we'll start with you, Dr. Mergel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Mergel, and I'm a senior manager here at the Office of Public Instruction. It's good to see all of you.
And I am Chris Noel, and I'm the Data Operations Manager for the Office of Public Instruction. And that means that I oversee the collection and quality assurance for our data here at the office.
Great. Dr.
Bayless? My name is Dr. Bayless. I am the project manager for special projects at the executive office, and I work with some of the large data sets and the superintendent and try to keep lines of communication clear between the many moving parts of the agency.
Great. And I am Jeff Kirksey. I am the ESSER program manager and have been grateful to work with many of you and answer as many questions as possible as we've navigated all of these ESSER funds and allowable uses. And so I manage all things ESSER for the agency. All right, I'll start today with just giving you an overview of ESSER and then get into some of the nitty-gritty. And I'll move pretty quickly because much of the content I'll be covering is really more of a reminder for you all, but I want to give plenty of time to my colleagues Julie and Chris to give you some good relevant information on the plan review and update process. So as you know, ESSER funding came to Montana in 3 waves. Corresponding each with a different legislative act of Congress. First was ESSER 1, which came to us through the CARES Act to the tune of just over $41 million. Then came ESSER 2, funded through the Carissa Act at just over $170 million. And most recently came ESSER 3, or ARP ESSER. ARP stands for the American Rescue Plan Act. And that came to us at just over $382 million. You might remember in ESSER 1, there was an equitable share process to support public or private institutions and homeschoolers. That changed in the future iterations, and EANS was created. And so that's why you're not doing equitable shares in ESSER 2 or ESSER 3, because that is being managed through the EANS process, which my colleague Janie Solomon manages. And we won't talk much about EANS today. If you do want a full side-by-side comparison of each of the ESSER 1, 2, and 3, that is available on our website. I want to put a few dates in front of you. This is also currently available up on our website. On November 10th, you received feedback on your ARP ESSER plans. We'll be going over that feedback today. And then just yesterday, you received access to your ARP ESSER Plan update tool. And Chris will be taking some time to walk us through that this afternoon. We are doing 2 technical webinars, assistance webinars. We did one this morning at 10 a.m., doing one again now at 1 p.m. This webinar will be recorded and will be up on the website and available for you to review. We are also going to do technical assistant virtual office hours tomorrow from 2:30 to 4 p.m. So if you have any questions, I'll be on Zoom live, and you're welcome to log on and ask any questions that you have, and I'll help to get you pointed in the right direction. Did want to give you a heads up. Starting the week of November 29th, we are going to start sending a weekly ESSER bulletin, and that's specifically targeted to ESSER-related content. We have been doing this through the Compass, although the Compass comes out just once a month. We want to be able to be more timely than once a month. And we also realize that ESSER information can actually be found in several different places in the Compass. So we're going to try to consolidate that into one weekly bulletin. So you can start looking for that in your email inboxes that first, well, it's the last week in November, first week in December. So then a couple dates we want you to have in mind. On December 17th, District ARP ESSER Plan update should be submitted to OPI and updated versions posted to your school's website. Also on that same day, we're asking that the Safe Return and Continuity of Services plans also be updated and posted to your website. We will spend a little time talking about the data collection today. That date is still to be determined as the federal government is finalizing what they'll be asking for in that data collection. And then just want to keep on your radar those obligation dates for ESSER 1, 2, and 3. They are September 30th on 2022 for ESSER 1, 2023 for ESSER 2, and 2024 for ESSER 3. All right, so we will be spending most of the day today talking about your District ARP ESSER plans. And so we just want to remind you that there are actually 2 plans. One is the Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services plan. This was due on June 24th to be posted to your school website, or if you didn't have a website, to submit that plan to OPI so we could get that posted for you. And there's also the District ARP ESSER Plan, which was due on August 24th. And much of what Julie and Chris will be sharing with you today is related to that District ARP ESSER Plan. Both the plans need to have public access. They are actually available on our website. And they also have to be understandable, uniform in format, and ADA compliant. So how does the District ARP ESSER Plan, how often does the District ARP ESSER Plan need to be revised? The plan must be updated no less than every 6 months until September 30th of 2023 and must include stakeholder input and public comment when revisions are necessary. Key dates for the District ARP ESSER Plan is November 16th. So yesterday, when you received that update document yesterday, late afternoon, through December 17th, you'll be able to go in and update those plans with any necessary corrections. OPI will also be doing checks for the return, safe return continuity of services plan. So we'll be monitoring those every 6 months. I'll be looking over those the first 2 weeks in December. And so while you're updating your ARP ESSER plan, go ahead and update your Safe Return Continuity Services plan and make sure that you have an up-to-date version on your website. Because if I find one that's out of date, I'll be asking you for an update. All right, so in updating and reviewing the return plan, similar to the District ARP ESSER Plan, the plan must be updated no less than every 6 months until September 30th of 2023. It must also include stakeholder input and public comment when revisions are necessary. If an LEA revises its plan, the revised plan must address each of the aspects of the safety currently recommended by the CDC at the time of the revision, or if the CDC has updated its safety recommendations at the time the LEA is revising its plan, each of the updated safety recommendations must be considered. So that always leads to this question: is it a requirement for a district to adopt CDC guidance as part of the development of the return to in-person instruction continuity of services plan? And the answer to that is still no. The interim final rule clarifies that the requirement does not mandate that all LEAs adopt the CDC guidance, but only requires that the LEA describes in its plan the extent to which it has adopted the key provisions and mitigation strategies identified in the guidance. All right. So does meaningful consultation require the LEA to include all the subgroups listed by the US Ed, by the Department of Ed? And the answer to that is yes, to the fullest extent practicable. So what are some recommended best practices for LEAs to meet the stakeholder input requirement? These practices include community-wide public notice and comment processes with an optional survey to gather input from various required stakeholder groups. School board meetings, small group meetings, and public forums would also supplement the process. Regardless of the process followed, the LEA must document that all the applicable stakeholder groups were included in the process and that meaningful consultation occurred. Documentation of all plans and public comments need to be saved locally, as the OPI may request the documents as part of the compliance monitoring for ESSER grants. And I just want to make a note here that if you are relying on your school board meetings as your venue for getting stakeholder input, you may want to reconsider that, because remember that it needs to be robust and meaningful consultation has to have occurred with all stakeholder groups. And so you might still be able to use a school board meeting for that, but you'll need to reach out to specific stakeholder groups, invite them to a specific board meeting, and let them know that that is the venue in which you will be soliciting their consultation. So you need to be able to demonstrate that you have made a good faith effort to reach out to every stakeholder group and get meaningful consultation. All right, so let's talk a little bit about data reporting and monitoring. So yes, the OPI will be monitoring district implementation of ESSER funds based on standard risk assessment procedures. The OPI also anticipates a US Ed response soon on data collection due to US Ed regarding state and local ESSER expenditures. So let's talk a little bit more about that anticipated federal data collection. So here's what we know so far. The first round of ESSER data collection public comments were due to the department by August 31st of 2021. OPI did submit a response to USAID with our concerns with the data collection requirements as that would affect Montana OPI and all of the school districts of Montana. On October 29th, just not too long ago, the Department of Education released an updated data collection for public comments. A number of the concerns that we shared in the first iteration were taken into consideration and updates were made, but we will be making an additional set of public comments on this latest version that is due on November 29th. As there's still some things we'd like the federal government to consider. We're not alone in that process. States across the country have been very active in submitting their comment, and you are welcome to do that as school districts as well. So as of now, we are waiting for the USAID to finalize the data collection requirements, but because they've shown us 2 iterations, we're starting to get a sense of what they'll be asking for. And so this is a little bit of what we are forecasting seeing in the data collection. So really there's 3 broad categories related to fiscal programming and personnel. Those could be disaggregated farther into 6 subcategories, and I've listed those subcategories here. We anticipate that they will be asking for expenditure details. That is a change. Originally, they were talking about asking school districts to list their obligations and their budgeted amounts as well. But we and several other states ask that they limit that to expenditures, as that will be the easiest data for you to pull. There likely be questions related to lost instructional time, and specifically those evidence-based practices used to accelerate learning. And they'll likely want to disaggregate that by activity type. School safety and infrastructure. This is where your safe return plan really comes into play. They'll want to see links to those plans that you have posted, and you can certainly use your school district links in that process, or you can use the links that OPI has provided through our site to your plans. Technical and remote support, it's very likely that they'll be asking questions about how you've used technology to manage any remote learning that you've had to do, or any of your students that have had to do remote learning because of a quarantine experience. So you'll likely have to provide some information on that front. Because these funds can also be used for personnel, we'll also be looking for FTE data for position and type, and specifically those funded with ESSER dollars. And as we've talked about right on along through the process, you'll need to be able to demonstrate equitable support across all the varied subgroups affected by the pandemic. So
Jeff,
that's
could I, just one other thing that districts should be prepared for is that we do anticipate that they're going to ask for student counts of participation in activities that have been funded with this money. And so I think that's just another thing districts might be aware, that if you funded after school or summer, or any of those things, that is another thing that we anticipate they may ask, is what the student counts and disaggregated by subgroup.
Yes, great. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, yes. Definitely do anticipate that. So, all right, at this point, I'm going to quit talking and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mergel. Julie, it's all yours for a little bit.
Thanks, Jeff. So I just want to take some time to just really kind of focus in on the feedback from the District ARP ESSER Plan. So all of the districts submitted that plan back on August 24th, and we've taken all of those entries and those plans, and a team here at the OPI has really taken a look at them and tried to really discern where are those places where we're meeting compliance, not meeting compliance of what needs to be in there, as well as just giving some generalized feedback for improvement areas. And so we then sent that feedback out to you all, to the administrators of the grant, the ARs, on November 10th. And we gave it to you in kind of a particular format. So if you go to the next slide, this should look familiar to you. One more slide just for a second. So this should look familiar to you. This was what was sent to you on November 10th. And the top part was broken up into the sections of the district plan from section 1 to section 8. And if there was some feedback that one of the members had felt they wanted to give you, they would have put it in the box on the right-hand side there at the top. And those were things like, when you're doing this, consider, you know, maybe adding a piece here or narrowing in on your data. There were different things that they had put there. They also made notes if there were some concerns around needing to make some corrections because it wasn't in compliance. But the piece I really want to kind of hone in on is this summary portion on the bottom. So when these plans were reviewed, we really went in to look at what were those pieces that are required, that are part of the assurances of the ARP ESSER dollars that you've agreed to that are in the e-grants. So what are those particular program assurances? And so these were the 8 different items. So the 5 things up on top that each of these plans had to be assessed for were, for example, did you select something that you're going to be using funds to implement prevention and mitigation strategies? Which were those? Did you identify the use of funds totaling not less than 20% to address lost instructional time? Did you have some things selected? What were they? And if you didn't select one of the things that was already pre-populated, did you select other and provide some justification there? And then the spending of the 80% of the remaining funds outside that 20%. There's a piece on, did you respond to the needs of students who were disproportionately affected by the pandemic? And then did you engage in meaningful stakeholder consultation to craft the plans? And so those were either a yes or a no, meaning yes, you did do that and you were in compliance with those 5 things on top, or no. And so if you received a no in any of those boxes there, that's going to require you to do a correction to your LEA plan. And Chris is going to kind of go through the whole process of how you do that here in a minute. But you're going to have to make a correction by December 17th to your plan, because there's something in the plan that is not currently following through on the assurances, or you're not in compliancy. And the same with the 3 on the bottom. We have to monitor these pieces and support you with the use of your ARP ESSER funds in these 3 ways. Are you implementing evidence-based interventions? Are you addressing those particular student groups? Are you working to re-engage and support students? Okay, so you might have gotten yes on all of these. And if that's the case, then your plan doesn't need to be corrected at this time. But you could choose to do a revision and maybe take some of the feedback on ways to enhance your plan and to go out for public comment. You know that the safety plans are up for their 6-month requirement, the safety and return plans. You may want to say, you know what, I'm going to take an opportunity to update our plans at the same time. So I've got both kind of in the same cycle. So that's a possibility as well. And so that's kind of really the timeline, right? Have to have it bare minimum every 6 months. So if you submitted your plan August 24th, you may not be needing to do an update until maybe February. That is if you received yes on everything. But if you received no's, we want those corrections by the 17th. So Jeff, you could just go back one slide really quick. I just wanted to share with you guys what were the like areas that we saw kind of happening in generally across a lot of plans where we just want to call your attention to from some feedback here. So we really want to encourage you guys to be thinking about coordination and of existing programs and services that are already in place so that you're not just adding on ARP ESSER as another thing, but actually really being strategic in how you're doing that. We really want to stress, and Jeff stressed at the beginning again, to really continue to do stakeholder consultation, that is really critical. We realized that this was a tight timeline when we submitted them in August, and that maybe you didn't have as much access to all of your stakeholders at that time, and maybe now you do. So if in your first plan, maybe you were able to, really meet with your board and some family members and staff, and you weren't able to meet with business partners or students, really consider, expanding your stakeholder consultation and getting all of those groups in, as well as maybe trying multiple ways. So we are really continuing you to really do that stakeholder consultation in a way as you're updating these plans. One of the things we saw is somewhat consistency among the groups of students that were identified. So for example, the question was asked, were there groups of students who were more impacted by the COVID pandemic than others? And then we would see that in the goals that there was not a special goal for that group. And so we were just trying to really ensure you guys that there's some consistency between the plan as you read it from top to bottom. We also noticed that there was some pieces around identifying the needs and said, these are the priorities that we have in our district right now. Don't know if those are the same priorities or not, but we found places where sometimes a district would identify a priority or need, but then the goals and the strategies that they were picking weren't really addressing those needs. So just really encourage you to go back and kind of look at it from that lens of, does it kind of move from here's the needs, this is what we're seeing in our data, to here's some identified strategies, to these are the pieces that we've considered. Another piece is around ensuring that the budget that's in e-grants is clearly aligned with this plan. We realize these are two separate documents, but you really do want to be visualizing them and ensuring that they're being implemented together and that they're really informing each other. So if you've identified in your LEA plan that you're using a particular strategy, do you see that in e-grants where there's materials or people that are being, hired to be able to implement that strategy? So just want to be sure that these things really are aligned from a budget and a programmatic place to what those needs were. And then last, it's kind of an opportunity to really narrow in and be sure that you're kind of have selected the things that are really measurable. We do realize that you can do a few things really well. And if you're trying to do a lot of things, it can get kind of complicated. So as you're looking at your plans, updating them, and or if you have to revise and update, that you're really taking an opportunity to kind of go back now that you've been implementing it for a while and say, oh gosh, do I need to kind of narrow in and really kind of figure out how we're going to implement these different pieces and really monitor them as we go through the next couple of years with this funding. So that was kind of the general overall feedback that we had after looking at hundreds of different plans from across the state. I think that I am, so Chris is going to take it from here. In terms of really explaining to you the process for how you will make these corrections. And so what I would say to you is you received a link yesterday. So you got your feedback last week on the 10th, kind of give you a little bit of time to look at that. And then yesterday you got a link that's going to take you through kind of the process here of how you actually go in and make, if you have any necessary corrections by the 17th, and or start to update your plan as much as you want, but at a minimum of once every 6 months. So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. It's all yours, so you can help the crew kind of visualize and see what this process is going to look like.
Excellent. So I'm going to take over screen sharing and hop into the tool. And I'm in the tool looking at a response that is, it's just a sample response. So if you see any district names in here or anything like that, this is just a sample. I just have to actually select a district from the list. So when you click on the link that you were sent in your email yesterday, you have the initial screen kind of goes over all of the requirements that we've talked about today. You'll notice that it's a little bit different than it was the last time. You actually need to put in your AR email address and a code. The code is your LE code. Now, there are some of you who have more than one LE. We've been experiencing some issues today with the launch. People who have more than one LE, in some cases have had to reach out to get that fixed. I think we will have them all fixed within the next hour or so, and so that shouldn't be a problem going forward, but if it is, please feel free to reach out. My LE code is LE number for now, but that just gets me in on this test one. For you, you will use that dedicated LE number. What should happen then is it should populate into the survey all of the data that was submitted with your initial plan. There will be a couple of new fields that you'll find. I encourage you on all screens to really ask the question, does this need to be updated? For example, if a different individual is submitting the form this time, you would want to make sure to update that information here. The two new things that are in this plan, one is describe the stakeholder consultation that was completed to inform this update. Julie just talked a little bit about how there needs to be stakeholder consultation with your updates. And so this is the space for you to share with us what that was. And the second one is a request to write a summary statement describing this update. And to be clear, we had a little bit of confusion in the last session about that. And I want to just clarify that it is literally a one phrase statement that contextualizes, this is my first update, my second update, my 10th update, whatever that is, or this is my update in March that I'm doing because we met with our stakeholders, whatever context you can provide. As Julie explained, it is kind of a rolling requirement of having a certain amount of update over time that is that requirement that for monitoring from the federal government. And we want to make sure that you and the OPI are both clear about how you're fulfilling that part of the assurances. Once you get past that, everything is here. Everything that you've already submitted is here. So if you're just correcting something that was flagged for you in your feedback, you can navigate straight to that section of the plan to just correct that one part. I do encourage everybody to take a few moments as you're going through your update, even if you're updating something very specific that you've gone in to fix at an individual level, that one issue. Take some time to look at things like your priorities. In many cases, these were written right as we were launching back into a school year that contained a lot of unknowns. If you have additional information now that you can clarify or provide context, you're welcome to do that. If you had all yeses, your plan is meeting the minimum criteria, but you are welcome in your update to make edits to any field that is no longer accurate or that you have new information for. And I'll just point out that when Julie was talking, she talked a little bit about that consistency across groups. This is one of the places where you are identifying the groups that are more impacted than others. And I know we saw a question in the chat about what happens if there aren't any groups that were more impacted. It is possible that there was no group in your district that was more impacted than another. I think most often we hear that statement coming from small schools where we don't have enough students to kind of even have some of these groups. And so I want to emphasize that a lack of alignment doesn't mean that you have failed to identify a group. It means that I've identified economically disadvantaged here, and I've identified children with disabilities here, and my priorities and my goals aren't lining up with that identification around the groups. And so this is one of the places where we were looking for that in the review. In your meaningful consultation, I think that's something that Julie talked about a little bit in terms of updating that question of who we've worked with, I do want to point out that if you are adding new stakeholders in as you do your update, your stakeholder consultation, this time included a new group, it is very important to go and update that so that you're accurately representing your overall stakeholder involvement here. As we click through the different questions here, I can see there are a whole bunch of things in the chat, so just let me know if there's something that relates to the page that I'm on. But as we go through and we think about these goals, again, this is an opportunity to add detail in the event that you didn't have enough information to have a really robust goal when you submitted your initial plan. As we move through, there's the question about if it's none, and I do want to model this. If I selected none here, that indicates that I don't have any special goals. When it comes to my math goal, my goal applied to all students equally. And that, if that is the case for your school, that is acceptable. You can mark none here. You just need to clarify here that you have no distinct goal. I think in some cases we saw plans get flagged just because we hadn't clarified that that's what we meant by none. And so that's just one thing that I noticed in looking at the reviews that you might think about if that was one of the things that got flagged. As we get to the end, and I'm going to modify some answers to just click through more expediently. But as we get through to the end, there are a couple new questions at the end, and those are questions that we added to allow you some flexibility around how you get this submitted. With the initial plan submission, we had a couple of ARs reach out and say, I feel really uncomfortable. I feel like I have to submit this myself. And we know that in some cases, you might have worked with somebody else in your district. You might have an assistant superintendent or somebody, a clerk, who is helping to get this submitted. In that event, we just ask that you note that there so that the first time that we are submitting this update, that you are not the AR if you are submitting on behalf of the AR. We also ask you in this case to select a statement that describes your submission. We've talked about that cycle of submitting. So every 6 months, we are going to have plan updates that we look at. There will be times where you submit an update and then immediately catch an error and want to just fix that error. And that's why we've given you this option here of just letting you know, giving you the space to let us know this is just a quick correction. Please don't file this as a whole new plan update. Once you click submit survey, it is going to send an email copy of your responses to both your AR and whoever it is that submitted the survey. And that is intentional so that especially in those cases where potentially a clerk is submitting this on behalf of the AR, that we know that that AR is also receiving the information and can verify that that is an accurate submission. Elliot, I will say that I have an email that is drafted to you. I was just pulling up all of the review notes from your 2 plans to be able to answer that. I don't know if the answer is that there was a technical error or if the answer is that there were different, they were looking for different things in a high school plan, but I'm pulling the plans up for you and I will get back to you later today once I can dive in and pull the full string of data. That said, are there other questions about this update? I want to just reiterate, our goal here has been to make this as seamless for you as possible, to reload your data so that you only need to touch the fields that need to be changed, and to provide you flexibility around who and how that update gets made so that you really can engage, more importantly, in the stakeholder consultation, in the work to support the students that you're doing with the Recovery Fund, and worry less about the box checking of retyping information we've already submitted. So if there aren't any other questions, we can kind of move into the next section, but I'm happy to go back through and answer questions as needed.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And so just to reiterate again, so just on November 16th, so just yesterday evening, you received an email that had actually several links in it. So it had a link to your original ARP ESSER plan that you submitted. It had a link to your district specific feedback, and it also had a link to the form that Chris just walked us through today. So if any corrections are necessary, those are due by the 17th of December. And you'll continuously monitor and update your ESSER plan at a minimum of every 6 months. Question that we got in the morning session was, well, do I have to update my plan now if I don't have any corrections to make? The answer to that question is no, you don't have to update your plan now. Although, because your continuity of services and safe reopening plan, those updates are due now in the month of December. I really encourage you to go ahead and do updates to both plans so you don't have to keep track of 2 separate months. So if you do the updates to both of your plans now, that puts you on a 6-month timeline to go ahead and make updates to both of those plans. And so I would encourage you to do that, although you're only required to do a minimum of every 6 months. So, all right. So, and when we will be posting this video and these slides online for you, and when you access them, you'll actually see this slide, and Chris will actually be providing a video that actually walks you right through the plan, much like she did here in the session today. But so that way you can go back and review that at your leisure. All right, so what other questions might you have for us at this point? Well, we'll continue to watch the chat to see if there are any more questions. A couple things I want to make sure that are on your radar, that as of November 30th, there is only 10 months left to spend down your ESSER 1 funds. And so if you have ESSER 1 funds still remaining, just make sure that you have a plan to obligate those funds no later than September 30th of 2022. And the last day to process cash request on those funds will be November 11th, 2022. So statewide, we have about $10 million still to utilize from ESSER 1. So that's $1 million a month, folks. So make sure you take some time to go back and look at your ESSER 1 funds and see how you can utilize all of those funds. Let's see.
Yeah, so we do have a question over there in the chat about the elementary district and high school district applying as a unified or separate, and should they receive 2 reviews or 1?
Yeah, you should only, you want to take it, Chris? I saw you were ready to. You're on mute.
I just put it in the chat. You'll receive the same number that you submitted. So some unified districts submitted 2 and some unified districts submitted 1. The number that you submitted is what you should have received back. And if you have questions about that, you can email me directly and I'll pull the plans and just resend if there's any confusion, especially around those.
Yes. And then Sherry, I see your question there. If you have corrections to be made to your district plan and make those, is that considered your update? And yes, it is. But you can, it certainly doesn't have to be limited to those corrections. So any of those updates that you want to make, that is great. I do want to take just a moment and just share with you our website. You'll see how to access there off the OPI main page. You click on that red Find ESSER Information button. That will take you to this page. And we are updating this page regularly. And so you'll see right here are all the key dates and technical assistance opportunities. We will continue to update that, just updated it yesterday, and we will continue to do that. A couple things I wanted to point out to you here. We have organized the guidance information, so it's a little easier to get at. There is guidance specifically towards ESSER 1 in this tab, guidance that relates to ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 under this tab. And then here under ESSER district resources, this is where we have, this is where we're putting all of our technical assistance that we're recording and making that all available to you. And there's also some good one-page information that will be helpful for you as you're reviewing your plans. A couple other things I wanted to highlight here. If you, under this tab is the state, is your allocation. So that should be visible to you in eGrants. But if you want to see your high school and your elementary school separate, if you have, if your elementary school is a fiscal agent, if you want to see those separated, you can go to this allocation table as well. I also wanted to know you to note that every month we are doing a statewide spending update, and so you can see how schools have been expending their funds as well as budgeting their funds. We actually have a percentage breakdown too there that shows you where most of your colleagues across the state are targeting their funds. We get questions pretty often from clerks asking for the funding information, the code information that's available right here under fund coding and current consolidated guidance. And anytime we update guidance, we update it right there. So you'll see that there. And the last thing I wanted to show to you is we are listing all of your District ARP ESSER plans as well as your safe return and continuity of services plans are linked right here on our website. You'll actually see the two columns. They are arranged by county. And so in this line here, you'll see the link to all of the district plans. And then over here, you'll have links to all the safe return continuity of services plans. So, so when you do, if you do excuse me, if you do update your content and the web address changes, please send me your updated website for your safe return continuity of services plan. For schools that do not have websites, please just send me a PDF of your plan, and we'll make sure that that updated plan gets posted to our website. All right. And let's see. Just looking to see if there are any other questions that have come in. Yes. Okay. So if you do have further questions, or if you have like district specific questions that you're encountering on your end, feel free to reach out to any of us. You can reach out to me directly. My contact information is here, as well as my direct phone number. We also do have a general ESSER website that actually all four of us monitor, and if it is ESSER dash OPI. I'll put it here in the.
I just put it in the chat.
Oh, you did. Awesome, Chris. Thanks. So, so if you have a general ESSER question, specifically if it's related to, or if it's specifically related to the plan and you want that question out in front of all of us, you can certainly use that address. But you can also reach out to me directly. All right. Well, seeing no further questions, thanks so much for your time. If you do have questions, want to chat with me live online tomorrow about that, I am hosting an open office hour. That link is on our website, was also sent out in the email communication we sent out yesterday. So I'll look forward to chatting with you there. So at this point, I'll stop recording.